Did you know that beneath the iron grip of the Soviet regime, a hidden world of drugs and a thriving black market that challenged the very fabric of state control existed? Welcome back to the Before Now channel. In this episode, we'll be uncovering the hidden world encompassing drugs and the black market in the USSR. In the late 20th century, the Soviet Union was often portrayed as a bastion of social order, a place where drug addiction was supposedly non-existent. However, this narrative masked a complex reality. While Soviet authorities initially claimed that drug addiction was a Western problem, by the late 1980s, the reality was starkly different. Reports indicated that drug abuse was becoming a serious social issue, with estimates suggesting that around 130,000 individuals were abusing drugs, though experts believe the actual numbers were much higher. The state's efforts to combat this problem were largely ineffective, as they oscillated between moralistic campaigns and harsh punitive measures. As the government tightened its grip, the black market for drugs flourished. This underground economy was not just a response to addiction, but also a reflection of the broader socioeconomic issues plaguing the USSR. The illegal drug trade became intertwined with the informal economy, where individuals sought alternative means of survival amid widespread shortages and state inefficiencies. However, in the late 1980s, the Soviet Union experienced monumental changes under Mikhail Gorbachev's perestroika and glasnost policies. These policies played pivotal roles during the drug and black market crisis in the USSR, which emerged from a combination of economic stagnation and political repression. With perestroika meaning restructuring, the aim was to revitalize the Soviet economy by introducing elements of market economics. Gorbachev sought to decentralize economic control, allowing limited private ownership and competition. This was intended to address inefficiencies in production and distribution, particularly in consumer goods, which had been neglected due to heavy military spending and a focus on state-controlled industries. On the other hand, glasnost, or openness, sought to increase transparency in government operations and reduce censorship. This policy enabled citizens to express their grievances and critique the government without fear of repression. It exposed widespread corruption and inefficiencies, leading to public disillusionment with the Communist Party. However, the introduction of these reforms inadvertently fueled the rise of black markets and the drug trade. As the state-controlled economy faltered, shortages of basic goods became rampant. Citizens turned to illegal markets to obtain necessities, leading to a surge in black market activities. The lack of regulation and oversight allowed drug trafficking to flourish, as organized crime networks exploited the chaos created by Gorbachev's reforms. Furthermore, glasnost facilitated greater awareness of societal issues, including drug addiction, which had been largely ignored under previous regimes. The media began to report on these problems openly, prompting public discussions about drug use and its consequences. Despite the growing crisis, the Soviet government initially adopted a policy of denial. It wasn't until the late 1980s that authorities began to acknowledge the magnitude of the problem. In 1974, the Supreme Soviet enacted stricter penalties for drug-related offenses, but these measures were largely ineffective. The 1987 decree aimed at enhancing punishment for repeat offenders highlighted the government's desperation to control the situation, yet it failed to address the root causes of drug abuse. Treatment options were limited, and many addicts faced stigma and a lack of support. The government's approach focused on punishment rather than rehabilitation, leaving many without the help they desperately needed. By 1990, the number of registered drug users had skyrocketed, with estimates suggesting that 2.5 to 3 million people in the USSR were regular drug users. A staggering increase from previous years. In fact, the types of drugs available varied widely, from opiates and hashish to synthetic drugs. The Soviet military, particularly troops stationed in Afghanistan, played a significant role in the drug trade, often bringing narcotics back home, further fueling addiction. Now, let's take a look at a scenario where the Soviet Union had adopted a more progressive approach to drug policy, focusing on harm reduction and rehabilitation rather than strict prohibition. A more effective treatment in place of societal attitudes towards drug users could have shifted from stigma to support. A liberal drug policy could have fostered a more open political environment, encouraging dialogue and reform beyond drug issues. This would likely have resulted in a healthier public discourse around addiction, mental health, and social welfare. Hence, a regulated drug market could have generated significant revenue for the state, potentially alleviating some economic pressures, and thereby increasing funding for public health initiatives and infrastructure, fostering a more vibrant economy. Neighboring regions, particularly in Eastern Europe, might have followed suit, leading to a more unified approach to drug policy across the continent. This could have altered the dynamics of global drug trafficking, possibly reducing the power of international cartels that thrived on the black market. But the political landscape shifted dramatically in the alternate reality, as the Soviet government, overwhelmed by the black market's influence, struggled to maintain control. This resulted in increased corruption, which weakened the state's apparatus, with local authorities often colluding with drug traffickers. The KGB shifted its focus from espionage to combating the drug trade, leading to a militarized response that further alienated the populace. The implications of this alternate Soviet drug market extended beyond its borders. Central Asian republics became major players in the global drug trade, and this led to increased violence and instability. Countries like Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan experienced a rise in organized crime and drug trafficking networks. The spillover effects created humanitarian crises, with rising addiction rates and social unrest spilling into neighboring countries. As we moved into the late 1980s, the situation worsened. The Soviet Union faced economic decline, which exacerbated drug problems. The black market expanded rapidly, with drugs being smuggled from regions like Afghanistan, leading to a surge in domestic drug use. By the time the USSR collapsed, it was estimated that millions were involved in drug use, creating a public health crisis that the state was ill-equipped to handle. Nonetheless, on the cultural front, drug use began to permeate various aspects of life, influencing music, art, and social interactions. The stigma around drug addiction began to fade, leading to a more open discussion about drug use, albeit often framed within the context of state propaganda against the West. As the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the black market for drugs did not disappear. It evolved. The chaos of the post-Soviet era saw a dramatic increase in drug trafficking and use, with Russia becoming fully integrated into international narcotics exchanges. By 2000, the number of registered drug users had increased almost five-fold, reflecting a societal shift towards greater drug acceptance and availability. Well, you might be wondering, how did the Western nations react to such a crisis? Well, let's take a brief look at it. Western nations, particularly the U.S., responded with a mix of military and diplomatic strategies to combat the growing drug trade. This led to strained relations, reminiscent of the Cold War, but now focused on drug trafficking. International drug policy shifted as the Soviet Union became a significant player in global narcotics, prompting new treaties and cooperative efforts to combat drug trafficking. Wrapping it up, the exploration of a more liberal drug policy in the Soviet Union revealed a myriad of potential changes in political, social, and economic landscapes. Having delved into the world of drugs and the black market in the USSR and uncovered significant yet overlooked aspects of Soviet life that reveal the struggles of a society grappling with addiction, repression, and the consequences of an underground economy, what lessons can we learn from this historical analysis, and how might they inform our approach to drug policy today? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Before Now channel, and we'll see you in the next video.